This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Another light has dimmed in Hollywood, and this is someone I personally knew. Actress, host, and brilliant stand-up Suzanne Whang has left us all too soon. She was only 56. Suzanne died of cancer. She was first diagnosed 13 years ago, was in remission a couple of times, most recently in 2016, diagnosed as cancer-free. But unfortunately, this year it came back. The last time she was on this program was back in 2016, as I mentioned, talking about her then positive diagnosis and also a new movie that she was working on called A Weekend with the Family. You can hear that conversation on Stuph File Program number 0345, but I thought the best way to honor the host of HGTV's House Hunters and one of the stars of NBC's series Las Vegas was to go back to one of our first conversations 10 years ago on my old live radio show in May of 2009. I had to do a lot of editing to bring this one to you because when talking to Suzanne, it was never a simple conversation. There would be laughing, we'd go off on tangents, we'd get silly, and she would ask me probably just as many questions as I would ask her. Remember, in addition to all the things she did, she was also a talk show host herself, so we'd often playfully wrestle control of the conversation from each other. Here now is just part of an early conversation from May 21st, 2009 with Suzanne Whang.
I come from an ethnic background. My family is from the West Indies. Mm-hmm. Your family from Korea.
Yes.
So isn't there a more of a disciplined situation amongst Korean kids as well? Did you rebel against your parents?
Sure. I rebelled in my own way. I mean, I was pretty much an ideal kid, I would have to say. And by the way, I read that the people you admire most are your parents, and I would have to say the same thing about my parents because I have those ideal parents that every day kissed me and hugged me and told me they loved me and made me laugh and told me that I was wonderful and that anything is possible for me in my life. And I guess most parents don't treat their kids that way. And so I feel incredibly blessed and fortunate to have those parents. Having said that, in Korean culture, education is very, very, very important, and getting straight A's and succeeding and doing well. And that was very stressful to be trying to get straight A's all the time, no matter what, and just must achieve and succeed. And so my big way of rebelling was I went to Yale, and then I got straight A's in high school, went to Yale, went to Brown, but dropped out of the Brown PhD program and only got a master's degree. Isn't that scandalous?
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, I should just be hanged.
So what were you taking? What was the direction you were going in when you were in university?
I got a BA in psychology at Yale. I showed up thinking that I would major in math because I was good at math, like a good Asian. But then as soon as I got to Yale, I looked through the Blue Book, which was the name of the course catalog, and as I was flipping through it, every single course in psychology seemed fascinating to me, and I circled every one of them and realized, ooh, it looks like I'm changing majors. Plus, even though Yale is a phenomenal place to study, as it turns out, I wasn't that impressed with the math classes that I took there, and all the psychology courses were fantastic. And I got a BA in psychology, and then at Brown I got a master's in cognitive psychology, which was my branch of specialization, which is the study of all cognitive processes like attention, vision, memory, language acquisition, things like that. And I had a blast studying psychology. In fact, you know how important those teachers are in junior high school and high school, at least for me. My high school psychology teacher, Mrs. Whitman, was kooky and offbeat and fascinating and funny and had us do these experiential, interactive, experimental types of things in psychology class to sort of teach us what we were talking about in a form that we could actually tangibly experience instead of just reading about it in textbooks. And I think that had much to do with the fact that I was so fascinated by psychology by the time I got to college.
So let me speak on behalf of your parents. What happened?
You mean, why do I pretend for a living now?
Yes.
To make people laugh instead of being a psychology professor? Well, after I left Brown with my master's, which, by the way, they call a terminal master's. If you leave a PhD program and only get a master's degree, they call it a terminal master's, like you died somehow. Anyway, I moved to Boston and was working at a healthcare consulting firm and ended up doing extra work on the show Spencer for Hire with Robert Urich and completely changed career paths. And I would say by accident, but I no longer believe that there are any accidents or random coincidences or anything like that. So, and I think for the first, couple of weeks, they were nervous, thinking, oh no, we're going to have to support her financially for the rest of her life. She wants to pretend for a living. But it quickly became clear that I think the first 20 auditions I went on in Boston, I booked 18 of them. And so I didn't have any sort of blockage or obstacles to thinking that I could do this for my life. And, they're my biggest fans. They do the non-Korean thing. It's very non-Korean to brag about your children. That's seen as very low class. And they break that rule all the time. They're constantly proud of me and bragging about all of my accomplishments. So,
Plus, on some episodic television shows, you've actually played a doctor.
Many times.
Yes.
Like many doctors. So, that part of them that secretly wishes that I were a doctor gets to live vicariously through those shows.
Your parents could take stills from those shows and just put them up in the house.
That's right, and yet they'd rather have a still of me in a movie with Steve Martin and show that to people. So that's good news.
Okay, so when you first started doing the comedy, and one of the things for people, and I think the last time you were on the program I actually mentioned this, I've actually made money on you in the past.
How have you done that?
Because when Las Vegas was still on NBC.
Yes. Which, by the way, it's on TNT every day in reruns.
Excellent. I would tell people, I said, you know the lady who plays Polly on Las Vegas? That's the same person who hosts House Hunters. And they go, no.
And you say,
there's no way.
$100.
Well, I don't go that high. Because that's a sucker's bet. I just, But I've had a lot of dinners.
Well, you're not alone. I've gotten a lot of email from people saying, you have to settle a bet between me and my husband. Mm-hmm. I say it's the same person. He says there's no way in the world that that's the same person. So, yeah, I developed a stand-up comedy character named Sung-hee Park in acting class back in 2002. And Sung-hee Park is fresh off the boat from Korea, in the traditional Korean dress, immigrant, doesn't speak English that well, has come to America to be a stand-up comedian and has no idea what she's doing and is nervous and shaking and could burst into tears if it doesn't go well, and then proceeds to tell the most horrific, offensive, vulgar, blue, racist jokes, but she has no idea what she's saying. And the whole point is that it's a satire on ignorance and racism and stereotypes in America, and she's just a fish out of water who is sweet and naive and innocent and trying to do well. And it's my send-up on how ridiculous all of these words are and how ridiculous it is to try to pigeonhole people when you take one look at them. It's not that different from Archie Bunker's character on All in the Family, and it's a little Andy Kaufman as Latka in the show Taxi.
Which is ironic because you won the first Andy Kaufman Award.
I did. You're the best interviewer. By the way, what is it like to be on the air alone before you have a guest on? What is it like to talk and have nobody say anything back to you? Because I've never been in that position. Every time I've been on the radio, I'm either interviewing someone or being interviewed.
Well, it's just telling a story, like the openings of House Hunters.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's like telling a story. Except,
I don't know why. It just seems more like if I were doing stand-up comedy on stage and there was no audience. Because you know what it is? It's because you're funny. You're smart and you're funny, and there's nobody around that gets to react to you.
I alluded to Polly from the television series Las Vegas, and I've been on a few sets before, and I can't imagine how the cast and crew got through scenes with a straight face when you were on, because you were just hysterical, and I find it hard to believe that everything you said was on the printed page.
Oh, no. Much of what I said was not on the printed page. But the way that happened is that I got the audition, and I was printing out the script in my house for this role, and it was so much like my Sung-hee Park character that I had been doing as a stand-up comedian for years that I thought, oh, I feel sorry for anyone else who's coming to audition for this role because this is my role. And so I just showed up, and I knocked it out of the park because it was in my bone marrow. I had been working on this very character, and it's just so funny to me that it was a white guy in Hollywood who wrote that part for the show, and it was just spot on. So it was just a co-starring role, 5 lines, 1 scene with Vanessa Marcel, who played my boss, Samantha. And I just did this one scene where I'm the spa manager of the Montecito Hotel that James Caan, is the owner of. And I get confronted by my boss, played by Vanessa, that I have overcharged this woman for her bikini wax. And Polly says, you see her before? She hairy like a man. I have to go all the way around corner, clean basement. I lift up a sheet, look like a jungle. And that was actually what was written on the page. And I thought, this is not possible that NBC wrote this and approved it. What's happening? And so I go and I do it, and it's Vanessa and I had spoken a little bit before we shot, and it, everyone was loving it and laughing, and then we're done. And Vanessa says to the director, hey, Robbie, Suzanne's a stand-up comic. Why don't you give her a free take? And Robbie said, oh, okay. Go ahead, Suzanne. Ad-lib, improvise, say whatever you want. Don't worry about the censors. And I thought, what's happening right now? This beautiful lead actress, a lot of times when you're on a set, there's an attractive female also on the set that's a regular on the show. She does not want to be kind to you or be generous, And now she's giving me this great opportunity. So I went ballistic, and the crew guys were clamping their hands over their mouths and shaking and falling off their chairs because now I'm being treated like I'm Jim Carrey or Robin Williams or, some crazy comedian. And it went so well when I did that every time I came back on the show, somehow it was passed down to whoever was directing or producing that episode that when Suzanne is done with the words that NBC printed on the page, let her say whatever she wants. And it became a tradition, and it became so effective that every time I would watch a new episode that I was on of Las Vegas, I would get some popcorn and cross my fingers because some crazy thing that I ad-libbed would end up on the show. I mean, I think I can say this word on your show. I made a fisting reference just to make the crew guys laugh once, positive that would never make it on the air, and the editor left it in.
Wow.
I mean, that just it really is beyond my comprehension, and I had such a great time working on that show, and I'm thrilled that they're showing reruns on TNT all the time, so there's still airplay, there's still an audience for it, and it just brings me so much bliss to work on something like that. And it's also because of Vanessa that it became a recurring role. Every time there'd be a new script written, Vanessa would go to the writers and say, yeah, here's where Polly can be in this scene, because she just wanted me back on the set.
Excellent.
And you're right. People had a really hard time keeping a straight face. Molly Sims, when we would do an over-the-shoulder of Molly looking at a close-up of me, Molly wouldn't even look at my face. She would look down. She couldn't even look at me because her whole body would start shaking.
That was a fun show.
So much fun, yes.
Yeah. And we mentioned the other show, House Hunters, which you can see all day, every day, several times a day. Here on HGTV in Canada, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in Canada, they play 2 back-to-back.
We do that in the States, too.
So we see it all the time. And to me, it's like a game show. It's like, I'm trying to figure out which one will they pick.
That's right. Is it 1, 2, or 3? And it's weird that you would say that because I actually am going to be hosting on the Game Show Network. I've done some guest hosting on GSN Live.
Right.
And it's these interstitials during commercial breaks and in between game shows where they have live hosts come on and do take in callers and do miniature, contests, and you can win things. And it's been so much fun. I'm thrilled about that. So it looks like it's turning into a regular gig for me, which will be so much fun. I don't know about you, but I grew up watching game shows. I grew up watching Pyramid and Password and Match Game and Family Feud.
Same here.
I was always obsessed with those shows. So I would love to host my own game show eventually, because think about it. Would you know many female hosts?
Betty White did a few shows, but you're right.
But Meredith Vieira took over from Millionaire, and there was that woman on The Weakest Link, and that is it.
Absolutely.
The whole history of game shows, so I'm really looking forward to that.
One of the things, too, and I mentioned earlier, the situation with Twitter, people talking about you and on HGTV, you must know that there are people out there who imitate your cadence on that show.
I know. Not only that, but apparently I wiggle my shoulders back and forth when I speak. And there's a big thing about the Whang wiggle. And, I don't experience it when I'm doing it, and I don't even necessarily see what they're talking about, but people are adamant that I do that. And there used to be a big controversy about my bangs, because at one point I decided to try to grow my bangs out because I was bored. But when you grow your bangs out, there's a period during which it's sort of uncomfortable because they're not bangs, but they're not long enough. So, it's just like not very flattering. And people used to send me emails saying, "We hate you. You look terrible without bangs. You could show a movie on your forehead."
Oh, man.
I mean, really, the cruelty to go from loving me to hating me because of 2 inches of hair. I mean, that's pretty incredible to me. So, and I was determined to never have bangs again, just to spite everyone. And then I realized that I agreed with them. They were right. I was really disgruntled by the fact that I agreed with them. So I will probably always have bangs from now on. So I'll be happy to know.
That's part of a conversation from May 2009 with actress, host, and comic Suzanne Whang. She was such a delightful person to talk to, and for me, an even more delightful person to get to know. I was lucky enough to know her both on the mic and off air as well. Suzanne passed away September 17th after a 13-year battle with cancer. She will be missed. As I mentioned earlier, the last time she was on this show was Stuph File Program number 0345, where she talked about her cancer remission. I urge you to go and listen to that conversation as well. I've put a link to it on this week's Stuph File Program page.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuph is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.